days ago, I watched a ghost ward video where you could hear real sounds made by ghosts. The video itself was very atmospheric, and the sounds were somewhat sad, somewhat angry, but I never felt like it was strange or scary. When I returned home that night after watching it, however, the exact same sound I heard in the video rang throughout my house all night. Day by day, it's been getting louder. The other day I felt something in the space where the wall meets the roof. Usually I make everything dark and go to sleep, but there was this spot on the roof that was even darker than usual. I looked away and then back again, but it was gone. Instead, I could now feel something directly behind me. I went to roll over on my back to see what was behind me when my body froze. It was sleep paralysis. The presence was right beside me. I was lying on my back, so I couldn't see it. I could only move my neck, and my eyes were useless. I was terrified, so I forced them shut. Then I could hear something whispering right next to my ear. I had no idea what it was saying. I was so scared, I just tried going to sleep. Then, next thing I knew, it was morning. But the next day, and the day after that, I kept experiencing the same thing. The voice. It's getting louder each day. There's no end to this story. I don't know how to deal with it either. Someone, help me. Even better, someone, please, explain that video. I'm so scared. So scared. Hey guys, this is your host Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to another episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. In case you couldn't tell from this week's opening tale, this week we're doing a creepy videotape special. You can find that first story, and many like it, in Kowabana Volume 1, which will be on special all next week in the lead up to Volume 2's release. If you haven't picked it up yet, there's no better time. Visit kowabana.net to find links for both books. Volume 2 is even bigger and better than before. And our first tale this week is one of the many new stories you'll find inside. A young man has been experiencing sleep paralysis, and he wants to know more about what's happening in the real world while his mind is awake, but his body is frozen. He sets up a video camera to film himself while he sleeps. But what will he see when he watches the playback? Find out in What Does Sleep Paralysis Look Like from the Outside? I think a lot of people have experienced sleep paralysis at some point of their lives. It's said that it's a phenomenon where your body is asleep, but the brain thinks it's actually awake. I agree with that analysis as well. So, when you experience sleep paralysis, what does it look like to someone on the outside? I wanted to know, so I decided to film myself sleeping so I could find out. I would set up a camera before getting into bed, and then if I thought I had sleep paralysis during the night, I would check the video the next morning. But, of course, it wasn't that easy. Over 2 months passed without any sign of sleep paralysis whatsoever. Then, one night, it finally happened. I wasn't especially tired or anything, nor did I feel like this would be the night. I went to sleep, and about 4 hours later, I think it was around 3 a.m., I was overcome with that uneasy feeling you get right before sleep paralysis. And as soon as I realized it, I succumbed to it. Finally, it's here! I was both excited and trying to keep calm at the same time. My goal was not just to experience sleep paralysis, but to keep it going for as long as possible. If I didn't, when I played back the video, there was a good chance I wouldn't notice when it was happening. So I didn't relax too much, and I tried to move my hands. So, I really can't move, huh? I was oddly calm, and stayed like that for about 5 minutes. Trying to maintain such a state was tiring. That seemed like long enough, so it was time for one final thing. There was one more part of my plan that I had yet to test. That was, while I was paralyzed, I wanted to try screaming as loud as I could. What did it look like to someone watching when you tried to scream when paralyzed? Were you really screaming? Or did you just think that you were screaming when you really weren't? I wanted to know, so with all my might, I screamed. I most definitely screamed, I thought. As I did, all the power drained from my body, and it became difficult to focus. Next thing I knew, it was morning. That day, I felt oddly sluggish. I suppose that was to be expected, with how much effort I put in the night before. But all I could think about was watching the video. Sadly, I had to go to work, and so I had to put it off until I got home. When I got back that night, it was finally time. I was excited, but also scared that all I would see was myself lying there, asleep. I really wanted to know what I'd see during the part where I screamed. I connected the camera to the computer and I checked the files. But something was wrong. Normally, the files save as like the consecutive number dot file extension, right? All the files from previous nights that I'd yet to delete were still in the folder. But there were also about 30 files with really odd names, like SSGGG343333 and B9MNKRS, things like that. They had no file name extensions, and when I double-clicked them, nothing happened. The files ranged in size from 3 megabytes to 550 megabytes. And even when I gave them the same extension as the other videos, they refused to play. There was nothing else I could do, so I opened the most recent file that would play. This one should have been from the previous night. The file creation time was from this morning. I started to play it. My room appeared. The camera was placed at an angle so my feet were at the bottom and my head at the top of the screen. Nothing was happening, so I fast-forwarded. And then I noticed something. The length of the video was displayed in the lower right corner of the screen. But it was only 4 hours long. Thinking about when I went to bed, I was asleep for around 7 hours. It was too short. I continued fast-forwarding. I couldn't see anything strange. Just myself lying on the bed, occasionally tossing and turning. I fast-forwarded through 3 hours of the video with nothing of note. But, if I remembered correctly, it was around this time that I had sleep paralysis. Preparing myself, I started to play the file at normal speed. Around 3.5 hours after the video began, something strange happened. Just like before, I was tossing and turning in bed, but right as I was in the middle of turning over, the screen froze. My right hand was floating in the air. Huh? I looked closer at the screen and noticed it was still playing. The numbers showing the elapsed time were still moving. The only thing that was frozen was me, lying there with my arms strangely floating in the air. Was this the sleep paralysis? My heart was pounding at such an unexpected development. Wasn't sleep paralysis just an illusion of the brain? I didn't think that my body would actually stiffen. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to perceive what was going on. I continued watching the video. For 3 whole minutes, nothing changed. Or so I thought. But something wasn't right. What was this strange feeling? Then I saw it. Something black was poking out from the end of my futon, where my feet were. It was moving so slowly that I didn't notice it. But it was right there, coming out the end of my futon. Before long, I saw something white coming out alongside the black. It looked like hair and a forehead. It was a person's face. A person's face was coming out of the bottom of my futon. The moment I realized it, my heart began to pound. I can't watch anymore. I should turn it off. But for some reason, I couldn't close the file. My hand was shaking, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't click the stop button. My body refused to listen to me. It was like I was experiencing sleep paralysis while awake. The face was halfway out. I could clearly see its eyes. There was no life in them at all, but they seemed to be looking at me through the camera. Before long, I heard this explosive sound, like a metallic myeon, myeon, myeon. I can't keep watching, I thought. I felt that if I saw the whole face come out, something awful would happen. Stop it! I don't want to see anymore! Stop it! I mentally screamed. The file was nearing the end of its playback time. Please, please end before I see any more. Then, the very next moment, I saw something unbelievable. In the corner of the screen, a figure appeared. It walked over to the camera and turned it off. But the figure that appeared, it was me. Expressionless, I put my hand out towards the camera and turned it off. I was overcome with both terror and confusion. I passed out. I woke up the next morning lying face down on the desk. The folder and files were still there on my computer. It wasn't a dream. Honestly, I didn't want to see it again. I deleted the files and then threw the camera away. I felt sick, so I took the day off work as well. What on earth did I see? It was undoubtedly myself on the screen that had turned the camera off, but I didn't remember doing that at all. And supposing that it was me, then who was sleeping in the futon? Not to mention that face. So sleep paralysis is a very common theme throughout a lot of Japanese creepypastas. The term in Japanese is Kanashii, which was originally a Buddhist term meaning to bind someone so they can't move. If you've ever experienced sleep paralysis, you'll know just how terrifying and real it can be. And its believability has made it a popular subject for Japanese creepypasta writers. Throw in a video camera recording you in your sleep and what can go wrong? Our next story is about a group of friends who are bored and decide to make a fake ghost video. They head out to the perfect location, but it soon becomes apparent that they're not alone, and what they capture on film astounds them. Find out what happens in We Tried to Film a Fake Ghost Video. I don't know whether anyone will believe me, so I debated posting this. About 1 year ago, I was with my friends T and O, when O suggested, "Hey, why don't we make a fake video for Nico Nico?" He brought out the video camera he'd just bought but barely used, and we took my parents' car up into the mountains. I was the only one of us who was 18 at the time and thus had a license, so I was the driver. Now, as for the fake video, T and I were going to investigate some ghost spots whilst filming, and then for just a second O would appear somewhere, wearing female clothing. Neither I nor T would notice him. Thinking about it now, it was really stupid, but at the time we were fully into it. The three of us were scaredy cats, however, so instead of going to an actual ghost spot, we went somewhere in the mountains that just looked like one, and filmed there. We left around 4 in the afternoon, and drove up the mountain road aimlessly until we found a nice unpaved road through the trees that fit what we were looking for. I drove down it, and at the end was an open space with an area to put all our things. So we got out and began looking for a suitable place to film, and somewhere good for O to hide. After searching for close to 30 minutes, I found a small, run-down cabin, not too far from where the car was parked. "How about here?" I asked. It's kinda creepy if I have to wait here myself," O started to complain. But we reminded him that he was the one who wanted to do this in the first place. And anyway, he would only have to wait about 10 minutes. Finally, he agreed, and we went back to the car to wait for darkness to fall. We played games and chatted for over 2 hours, until finally everything was dark. O changed into some of T's older sister's clothes that he'd taken without permission, while T and I walked around the fake ghost spot, making up information as we went. We tried our best to refrain from laughing and act scared as we walked towards the cabin O was waiting in. But when we were about 10 meters away, O suddenly started screaming and ran out. "No way, no way, no way, no way, no way, no way, no way." At first, we just stood there, dumbfounded. But O's expression was so serious that we got caught up in the moment and ran off at full speed with him. When we reached the car, O, still in his female getup, said, "We gotta go now! This place is dangerous! Let's go!" We had no idea what was going on, but we got in the car and returned the way we came. We drove for a while, and as we finally reached the paved road again, something strange happened. There was a loud bang, like something had landed on the rooftop. If something happened to my parents' car while I was driving it, it would be no laughing matter. So I pulled over for a moment to check it out. O yelled, "Don't stop! You can check later, just keep going! It's dangerous here!" There was nothing else I could do, so I went to start the car, when T grabbed my arm from the passenger's seat. "Hey, look at that." He was pointing to something outside his window. I looked over, and my breath caught in my throat. There was a group of people in the trees coming towards us. There were about 20 of them, all standing there, looking at the ground. They appeared to be walking slowly, but they were approaching the car with incredible speed. The hairs all over my body stood up on end, and I broke out into a sweat. It was just people walking towards us, but the sight of it was terrifying. I started the car, and we took off in silence. A short while later, we saw the lights of a rest stop in the distance. "Let's stop here for a bit," I said to T and O. Neither of them said anything, so I pulled in and stopped the car. I asked O again what happened, and he finally remembered that he was still in female clothing. "Hang on, let me get changed first," he said. Things started to calm down, and the atmosphere in the car returned to normal. We got out to buy a coffee from the vending machine, and once again I asked O what happened back in the forest. To summarize, O was waiting for us behind the small cabin. He heard voices coming from the other side, and thinking it was us, he moved to the window we had agreed upon earlier. But no matter how long he waited, he saw no signs of us, so he stuck his head out to see what was going on. When he did, he saw an unkempt old lady standing in the middle of the path, grinning at him. It creeped him out, but if she continued to stand there, it would ruin our plans for the video. So he called out, "Hey, excuse me, would you mind standing aside for just a moment, please?" She continued to look at him, smiling. She showed no sign she'd heard what he said. Getting annoyed, O went closer and took a slightly harsher tone with her. "Look, could you move aside for just a few minutes?" Still smiling, she grabbed his arm and started to drag him into the woods. "What are you doing?" O said, pulling back against her. But she was incredibly strong for an old lady, and he found himself being dragged away. Then, from deep in the trees, a large group of people began making their way towards him. O didn't know if they were actually people or perhaps something else, but he knew for certain that they weren't normal. I don't know how to explain that group we saw at the car either, but at any rate, there was something off about them. We weren't very satisfied with any explanation we could come up with. The fake video was a failure, and it was getting late. So we called it a day and went home. During the summer holidays, the three of us hung out a lot, but we never spoke about what happened that night. Then one day, I was out with a friend at karaoke until the early hours of the morning. I started to ride home at about 5 a.m, and on the way I saw O standing on the other side of the road. He was carrying what looked like a tray with a glass of water on it. What the hell is he doing? I thought. So I yelled out, "Hey! O! What's up?" There was no reaction. He turned at the crossroads and walked off somewhere. At around 2 p.m. the same day, I was woken by a phone call from O. He had something to tell me, but it would be difficult to explain over the phone, so he wanted me to come over. When I arrived, T was also there. "I want you guys to see this," he said, and showed us the video we filmed that day. We watched it, and then T said, "What's the meaning of this? What the hell is that?" He took the words right out of my mouth. Now, I remember walking around filming here and there, and I remember when we ran, and there were no discrepancies between any of our memories of that night. But, for some reason, the video showed the three of us sitting in the car. We never left. The video camera was fixed to the back seat the whole time. But the first 20 minutes we were just sitting there, silently. Then O got up and exited the car, again in silence, and disappeared from view. 5 minutes later, T and I opened the door and went outside, and the camera continued to film the empty inside of the car for another 10 minutes. We never said a single word. The only thing we heard was the opening of the doors and the sounds of bugs outside. O stopped the video and turned to us. "What do you think?" "What do I think? I mean, what the hell was that?" I said. The video was completely different to what the three of us remembered happening that night. How was I supposed to answer that? T agreed. "Yeah, but after that it gets even more weird," O said, and pressed the play button once more. For a while there was nothing but the empty car and the scenery through the front windscreen. But about 4 or 5 minutes later, a figure appeared. They slowly approached the car, and before long we realized it was the old lady. "Her! It was her that grabbed my arm!" O screamed, agitated. The old lady walked up to the car and placed her hand on the bonnet. She smiled, looking inside, and then returned to the road she came from. The video changed right after she was no longer visible. Suddenly we could hear ourselves screaming, and O screaming, "No way! No way!" We could see ourselves there, no idea what was going on, trembling. It was weird, almost unnatural. Like we had been waiting near the car the whole time, and then suddenly we just started acting confused and upset. The rest of the video was what happened until we arrived back at the car, but that was exactly how we all remembered it. There was just one more strange thing. O was supposed to appear on film wearing the female clothing, and he didn't get changed until we got to the rest stop. But in the video, he was wearing his normal clothes. So when did he get changed? Everything about it was unnatural and strange. The video was completely different to our memories and threw the three of us into a state of utter confusion. When the video finished, O began to speak again. "So, about today. I went to sleep last night, but when I woke up this morning, I realized I was standing by the river with a tray and a glass of water. I have no memory of how I got there. I remembered what happened in the morning and mentioned it to them. How I tried to speak to O, but he didn't notice me at all. Then O continued. So, I had no idea what was going on, so I just came back home. But when I got here, I was overcome with this sudden urge to watch the video. I had to. Then I saw what you guys just saw and, yeah, I wondered whether I should let you know or not, but in the end I decided it would be best if you saw it for yourselves as well." Isn't it dangerous if we just leave the camera's flash drive like that? Shouldn't we have it cleansed or something? T said. We all agreed and immediately took the camera and the video to a nearby temple and explained to the monk what happened. He was at first suspicious of our story, but when we showed him the video, he pondered for a bit before saying, "Could you leave this with me for a while?" We didn't want such a creepy thing anymore, so we left the flash drive and our contact details with him and went our separate ways for the day. The next day was chaos. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on the bridge over the river, holding a tray and a glass of water, just like O had been. I looked over, and T was also standing there, dazed. I called his name over and over, but there was no reply. I shook his shoulder, and he finally came back too. What was I just doing? Where am I? The night before, I went to sleep in my futon. I should still have been there, and yet here we were, both of us, standing on a bridge completely unawares. I felt sick, so I called O. I woke him up, and at first he didn't know what was going on, but when I explained again, he told us to come over right away. We discussed what happened and decided to go to the temple once more to find out what was going on. We went over and explained what happened, and the monk came over to see us. He listened to our story with his arms crossed, thinking, and then got up to leave like he'd suddenly remembered something. He came back with 3 talismans. He told us the following: I want the 3 of you to forget what's happened. Keep this talisman close to you for the next year. If you do that, nothing like what happened to you this morning will ever happen again. And as for the flash drive, I'd like to keep it a little longer, if that's okay with you. The monk seemed to know something about what was going on with us, but in the end wouldn't say anything. We really wanted to push him to find out more, but it was probably for the best that we didn't. But the monk did give in and tell us one thing. First he asked, was there a river near the cabin or area you parked? Not that I remember, O answered. I see. He then told us his guess as to why we were waking up next to the river, holding a glass of water. We'd fallen under some kind of curse, and the continuation of it involved someone trying to send us to the river. The monk never told us whether that someone was a human being, or perhaps something else entirely, but apparently the water in the cup was the key to the curse's journey through the river. We were being guided to the source of the curse. While we were asleep, we were filling a glass with water and then going to the river with it to receive the curse. If we didn't do anything now, it would continue. And the monk didn't know what would happen after that. But it probably won't end well, was all he said. The talisman didn't seem that powerful, but apparently it would hide our location from the source of the curse. Then, after a year had passed, all traces of the curse would disappear, and it would no longer have any control over us. I don't have anything to back it up, but when he handed us the talismans, my sense of unease disappeared, and I finally felt relieved. We all went back home. We graduated from high school and went our separate ways, and I started going to university in Tokyo. We still keep in contact, but we don't talk much about what happened that time. I still keep the talisman on me, just like the monk said, and perhaps because of that, I haven't had any more strange incidents or losses of memory. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. If there are any other themes or stories you'd like to see in future episodes, you can let me know at kowabana.net/podcast. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving a review for it on iTunes. It's super easy, and you can find the link for it at kowabana.net/podcast. Thanks guys, and we'll see you again next week for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.